started, we had Ukrainian representatives saying that they are very much focused on an immediate ceasefire to start now and last at least 30 days. But the Russians are saying they want to address more fundamental issues, which they keep calling the root causes of this crisis, which essentially means Ukraine's existence as a sovereign state.
Recapping on your top stories, the South African presidency has confirmed the delegation to accompany President Cyril Ramaphosa on his visit to the White House in the U.S. next week. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, an ongoing legal dispute continues to sour relations between forward Kylian Mbappe and his hometown club PSG in one of football's longest-running transfer sagas. And we also get to hear about the relationship between business and golf. Details at 4:30.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Kenya. Good afternoon, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire. Good afternoon to you, Botswana, Eswatini. Good afternoon, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana. Good afternoon, South Africa. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. It's gone exactly 8 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Here's an open invitation for you to engage with us on our various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. If you have any stories that you'd like to share that you believe would be of interest and relevant to our listeners both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon with a focus on Africa's desire to have a sustainable supply of electricity in rural areas and to meet the need of cottage industries for growth and development that is soon to be fully realized through the intervention of the International Finance Corporation, or the IFC. This is being made possible through a collaboration effort with the African Development Bank and private sector initiatives towards making sure that rural communities are placed on the sustainable energy supply through renewable power supply. Channel Africa News correspondent in Nigeria, Collins Nosa Atonegme, reports.
The plan by African nations to extend uninterrupted electricity supply to its rural populace have been hindered by lack of funds and the absence of relevant infrastructures, despite the continent's enormous resources. Economic downturns at varying degree, poor pricing of African agricultural produces and minerals at the international market also added to the prevailing economic downturn, making Africa vulnerable to the effect of unstable world economic system along with increasing foreign debt. To reduce this burden, the International Finance Corporation, IFC, an arm of the World Bank, has reached a number of agreements with interested companies in collaboration with the African Development Bank to connect about 300 million households in Africa's rural communities with electricity. Disclosing this in a media session, the IFC representative for Central Africa and Anglophone region, Dahlia Khalifa, says the project would employ renewable energy to achieve these objectives.
So we are very much looking, of course, through our M300 program, which you may have heard of, in which we, as a World Bank group, are committed to connecting at least 300 million households to electricity. And we're doing this in cooperation with the African Development Bank. And we're really looking at ways that we can ignite sources of energy, particularly renewable sources of energy. We signed one step in that direction. So we signed today a transaction which will fund a company called Husk to generate solar in rural areas, so that really connecting people to electricity in rural areas.
Looking at the low government revenue and other contending issues across the continent, the feeling remains that meeting individual goals in power supply hangs on a dagger point, except there are collaborative efforts to help even the IFC and governments achieve this laudable project. Adesuwa Ladoja, the director of the Lagos Free Port Zone, says collaboration between the public and private sector in this manner will be able to make project execution possible, and this will help reduce instances of white elephant projects. She says it's a win-win situation.
When government and private sector collaborate, then you have the best of both worlds. You are able to bring a project to life in the shortest possible time, taking care of all the parameters, because government will ensure that job creation is put at the fore, environmental concerns are addressed, while private sector will bring in the capital and the project becomes operational as planned.
While many have the feeling of inadequate energy supply in major cities where there is the hidden pain of Africans' inability to supply and to fully meet its desire to catch in on the value addition plans so that its supply of goods and services to the international market could attract higher prices. The first feeling before the new drive to emphasize intra and inter-Africa trade had been that the problem is to be found in poor responses from the African market. But an economic analyst, Ted George, says that is not the case. Rather, lack of cheap energy is the problem. George advised that Africa should take into consideration the fact that it has other nations to compete with, which to a reasonable extent have cheaper means of power supply.
Basic key problem here, it's nothing to do with the African markets or the ability of Africans to add value. It comes down to power. You know this living in Nigeria. People very often have three generators. They have one when the grid goes down, they have a backup and a backup for the backup, even just to pump water and run the lights. So if you're producing commodities, let's say you're making cocoa products or you're refining petroleum, you need a cheap and reliable source of power. And if you're particularly going to be selling commodities on the international market, it has to be competitive with other countries which can have cheap and reliable power. So that's really a critical point here.
To get out of the woods, many more government agencies and individuals are investing in power from renewable sources, especially solar. In South Africa and Nigeria, for instance, individuals living in city centers now depend on use of solar energy to power their homes, and the cost of public power supply has risen even for manufacturing companies, and it is driving the prices of commodities beyond reach. The Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna has launched its own prototype of solar energy plant to supply powers to at least 10,000 homes in its formation, because as it is, it has been predicted that government will need about $10 billion annually to meet its energy demand, and that is an uphill task. From Lagos, I am Collins Nosar Tohimbi for Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It has gone exactly 14 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time, as we focus now on issues of banking and AGOA. The chief economist at FNB, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, says South Africa's possible loss of the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA status, which translates to 1% of the country's GDP, should be seen as an opportunity for the country to look for new markets. This comes as questions loom on whether the United States will remove the Southern African nation from AGOA. Mkhwanazi was speaking at the inaugural RMB Wealthwise 2025 event held on Thursday night in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thami Ngubeni compiled this report.
The inaugural R&B Wealthwise 2025 event took place under the theme of People Empowered by Tech, an exclusive thought leadership event to connect with industry experts, innovative leaders, and like-minded professionals for a dynamic series of talks and an immersive exhibition revealing some of the most exciting trends in tech and innovation. Chief economist at FNB, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, was among the speakers at this event and says South Africa's possible loss of the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA status should be seen as an opportunity for the country to look for new markets.
A lot of questions have been asked about the SA-US trade relations, whether South Africa is going to remain in AGOA and what the impact is going to be should be kicked out of AGOA. And I think here we must just accept that probably AGOA is a thing of the past, but for us it is what will be the impact should we use AGOA. The first thing to note here is that as much as this is an important market for South African exporters, in the bigger scheme of things, the impact actually isn't that big. My estimation that translates to around 7.1% of GDP. It's not too big. However, at a localized level, for example, you are in the north of Pretoria, your economy there mostly relies a lot on car production, or you are from Limpopo, you work at a farm that produces citrus, for example. That impact will be felt at that level, but at an aggregate level, probably not going to see that big of an impact. It's also an opportunity for South Africa to look for new markets, and we know that they've been hard at work to try and identify new markets. So that too is going to mitigate some of the impact.
The country's finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, will next Wednesday, for the third time this year, present government's fiscal framework in Parliament after two previous versions were rejected because of the proposed VAT hikes. This is the first time since the country's democratic dispensation that Parliament has failed to pass the budget in February, which Mkhwanazi says is not unique to South Africa, but testing the strength of the country's democracy.
The first thing to note here is that massive budgets are not unique to South Africa. We see them in the US, for example. It's an annual event. They have a name for it. In Netherlands, they are dealing with similar issues. In Germany, they even have to call in any election. In Sweden, you see it. So the point is, it's not unique to South Africa. What I think is good, though, is that our democratic institutions are being tested. I think it is good for us as citizens. Gone are the days when we think Parliament is where people meet and shout at each other, vote yes, no, and go home. We are now learning that actually Parliament can direct policy in South Africa. And I think we should take that as a positive. Of course, it's uncomfortable. It's not nice. It does create uncertainty. But I think it just signifies the maturity of our democracy.
The evening featured engaging keynote addresses from experts from First National Bank and RMB Private Banking, which included an exhibition showcasing interactive experiences, highlighting emerging technologies, along with valuable networking opportunities with fellow forward-thinking professionals. Meanwhile, Dr. Mark Nasila, Chief Analytics Officer at FNB Office, shared how artificial intelligence has emerged as a threat of national security and also economic competitiveness, emphasizing the need for maturity for the successful use of AI.
Leaders are worried about that. And why are they worried about that? Because the impact of AI to a country goes beyond just efficiency, goes beyond just being productive. Why are they worried about that? They are worried about national security. Why? Because AI is at the center of bolstering national security, but we've also seen in the recent few years it will help create a need for people and drive the creation of jobs. Technological autonomy is very important. Last year in August, we had the New York situation where you could end up in a situation which we call the AI death. We talk about global influence, but also the ability to just provide services to the public with technology.
that there is the developments, or those are the developments around AGOA discussed at the inaugural RMB WealthWise 2025 event. Takes us to exactly 20 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. In just a moment, a look at stokvels and how they are being used to grow wealth.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Growing numbers of South Africans are discovering that saving money as a group can be more effective than trying to save it all alone, making stokvels a safer, more accessible way to build financial security and to reach shared goals. Experts alongside key industry thought leaders today gathered in Soweto to explore the importance of stokvel contributions in the South African economy, as well as unpack key insights from the stokvel industry. To discuss this further, we have on the line, I call her a stokvel guru because she literally is the queen of stokvels. She is Busi Iskenjani, founder of the Stokvel Academy of South Africa. So good to have you with us. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thanks for that welcome, a warm welcome, Thami. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I was actually just saying a little bit earlier on, speaking to the team as I was taking through, that I've had the privilege of talking to you over the decades. And one thing about you is that you've been so consistent within the industry of stokvels and have really assisted so many to organize themselves, but also look at the economy of the stokvel market. Talk to us about how big stokvels actually are in South Africa. And I know they are actually organized in other parts of the continent as well, but perhaps under different names.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, stokvels are massive, and I'll be honest with you, my personal view is that we don't have the actual figures. You know, the 50 billion rands that is being flaunted around is an underestimation. So there could be close to even 100 billion rands that circulates within stokvels, considering the history, you know, and, you know, just the day-to-day activity that you see visually. And I think our financial institutions can attest to the massiveness of this market. And throughout Africa as a continent, stokvels, you know, operating in different names, are making a real social and economic impact in their communities.
And what is it that has led to the growth of stokvels in South Africa?
Look, I think to put it simply, I would call it stokvels have been one of our self-help mechanisms as Black people in particular, through different difficult times. You know, way back when people could not literally have access to the financial institutions, you know, or even just basic finance to enhance their lives, things like school fees, pay for, you know, buying food. Stokvels had to devise a survival tool for themselves. So I think that's what triggered, you know, the growth in stokvels. They played a very important role in our social cohesion, and they continue to do so, even now taking to the next level of actually putting us on the table in terms of economic involvement.
And how have they evolved over the years? Before, it was really focused on making sure that there's money to buy groceries for December, but they've become so much more sophisticated now. Could you talk us through the scope of what stokvels are being used to do now?
Look, I mean, obviously the younger generation is coming in now, and they don't want to be like Gogo Stokvel or anti-Stokvel. So they are looking at, you know, what role can they play on the economic space. For example, property investment is one of the buzzing, you know, stokvels now among youngsters. But even traditional investment products within our banking system, you know, the younger generation, they are no longer content with just saving money with Bank X. You know, they're exploring how can we actually grow our money, how can we create wealth for ourselves. So they're not parking their money like, the elders used to do, just to say in the event of death, we'll have just enough money to bury so and so. So they are into wealth creation. Business is another trend that we see happening. The hustlers economy, youngsters who are wanting to start businesses using stokvels as a finance model. That's what is emerging.
And how much we did speak about the contribution to the economy and about how much is circulating. You were thinking that 50 billion rand is rather conservative, probably twice as much as that is what's circulating. But we've also seen banks now having tailor-made accounts for stokvels. What do you make of that? And what are the advantages that the banking sector are now giving to stokvel accounts?
Look, I think it's overdue. It had to happen, considering that personally I became sensitized in stokvels more than almost 50 years now. Now you can imagine there are people, my elders, who have been in stokvels. So we can roughly say there's people who have been in stokvels for 100 years as we're speaking right now. So the question is, how long has been our banking system alive in South Africa? That being said, it means that yes, the time has come to actually look at stokvels as an important market segment within your bank system, not just people who will just park their money and withdraw it at the end of the year. Hence the development of products that are, tailor-made for stokvels. There's not enough of such products, I must be honest, but I think there is something moving, a council towards that direction.
I've just been looking at this and looking at what stokvels are called in different parts of the continent. It says in Central Africa, in Cameroon, it's Njangi or Tontine. In the DR Congo, it's Likimimba or Tontine as well. Yeah. You know that one. And then in West Africa, in Nigeria, it's Isusu in Yoruba, or Ajo, also in Yoruba, and in Hausa, Adashe. Kenya, Chama, and Tanzania, Opatu, and Burkina Faso.
It's Paramara. I think it's Para.
And then in Zambia, it's a Chilimba, but very much the same principle around group savings, around, shared financial responsibility. And as you're saying, it's something that even those who have come before us have been practicing, but now it's been packaged so that it is actually quantifiable as a contributor to the economy. But if somebody is listening and they're saying, I want to run a stokvel, I want to start a stokvel, and I want to grow a stokvel, how do they do that? And I'm speaking to you as the founder of the Stokvel Academy of South Africa. So you've literally broken this down into a science.
Yeah, thank you for that again. I think this science, there's still a lot that needs to be added in the laboratory. But anyway, the basics will always remain: how to start a stokvel. It's identifying people who at least share the same, you've got a common need, but it should not just be a need. What are your values? What is your vision? Because I'm talking now about the stokvel sustainability. It's one thing to start a stokvel because you want to save money and share at the end of the year, but we need to begin to look at the long-term sustainability of our stokvel beyond the next 5 years, 10, even 50 years or more. Today I was engaging, addressing a group of stokvels in Soweto, and I said to them, let's just close our eyes and imagine how stokvels would look like in 2075. And I saw the eyes popping out as if I'm just, information. And 2075 is 50 years from now. So if I've been part of stokvels for 50 years, so yes, we need to start saying how are stokvels going to look like, how are we going to sustain them? The key word is sustaining. We know that there's trust, there's teamwork, but what is paining me, stokvels, is the lack of financial knowledge. We can have all this money circulating with stokvels, but how is this money being used? So financial knowledge is extremely critical for the development and sustainability of stokvels as generational wealth creation tools in South Africa.
And how does one plug that gap? How do we ensure that the stokvels of 2025 are very different from the stokvels of 1995?
again, as I said, knowledge. What do I mean by knowledge? Let's take, an average stokvel that is saving with Bank X. Do they explore the product offering within the bank? You've just mentioned, asked me a few minutes ago that banks developing products that are stokvel specific. If they are not, then stokvels need to challenge them and say, these are our needs. So that's the evolution that needs to take place. It's about us. It's our money. We want to grow our money. We want this money we want to make an impact in our economy. Because another thing that we need to look into time is that stokvel can also help in the unemployment alleviation. Stokvels have got the capability of actually being job creators. The taxi industry, we know that lots of taxi owners today were enabled by stokvels to be actually in that business. The tavern owners, even the spaza shops, our local spaza shop owners, South Africans, they are still using the stokvel model. So that trend, I don't see it dying any soon. Instead, we need the younger generation to actually see that they can aspire to enhance their lives, not short-term, but for the long-term and wealth creation and sustainable wealth creation movement.
Mambusi Kenjani, thank you so much for your insight once again. And it's so great just to remember the fact that a lot of small businesses were actually started from money from stokvels, because you couldn't just go to a bank. You don't have the credit worthiness. You don't have any collateral, but a group of people pulling money together can help you start that small business. Thank you so much for your insight and your time today.
Thank you. Thank you
so much. That's Busis Kenjani. She's founder of the Stokvel Academy of South Africa. It's got exactly 4:32 Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk, where Chanduko Ligege is standing by with the latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. $1 is trading at 18 Rand 12 in South Africa. In Botswana is 13 Pula 43. Namibia 18 Namibian dollars 12. Zambia 26 Kwacha 65. In Kenya the dollar is 128 shilling 535. Ethiopia 133 birr 771. Uganda 3,000 shillings 632. Tanzania 2,000 shillings 694. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 599. In Egypt, the dollar is 50 Egyptian pound 19. Tunisia 3 dinar 1. Algeria 132 dinar 598. Morocco, the dollar will cost you 90 rand 32. In Angola, the dollar is 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is 2,850 to the US dollar. Commodities: gold is $3,181, platinum at $983 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $64.90 a barrel. That is all from me. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And heading over to the sports desk for the business of sport with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. So according to MRC Sport, Paris Saint-Germain found a counterclaim in the Paris Judicial Court on Monday, requesting the cancellation of a $60 million seizure order that Mbappe had successfully placed on his former club accounts in April of this year. So lawyers representing PSG argued that the legal basis of the seizure was flawed, as they believe Mbappe failed to demonstrate that the debt was clearly owed or that there was an imminent risk of non-payment. So in response, Mbappe's legal camp defended the precautionary seizure and also reiterated that only a fraction of the amount owed had been recovered. According to his lawyer, Thomas Clay, just $14 million out of the claimed $55 million had been retrieved during the process, and the rest needs to be paid up. Meanwhile, Ranud Simejan, one of the club's legal representatives, told the media that a new $109 million demand was not necessarily intended to be enforced. Rather, it was meant to challenge the legitimacy of Mbappe's initial claim. After months of back and forth accusations as well as legal maneuvers, at the end of the saga may finally be in sight. The Paris Judicial Court is expected to deliver its ruling officially on the 26th of this month, a decision that could either vindicate Mbappe's financial claims or validate PSG's defense as well as counterclaims. So that's a story we'll be watching very closely until the 26th of May. Meanwhile, the prize pot for the FA Cup is very little compared to the Premier League as well as the Champions League. So clubs rack in over $100 million per season just for being in top flight football, while there is a total of $2 billion being dished out across UEFA Premier competitions. So the winner of this year's FA Cup will bank $2 million, while the runner-ups will walk away with $1 million. That FA Cup final is taking place tomorrow. It's a final between Crystal Palace as well as Manchester City. Onto this now. The new kind of golf experience recently landed at the Serengeti Golf as well as Wildlife Estate in South Africa's Gauteng province, where every swing, step and conversation is aligned with purpose. Now introducing Swing for Golf's a flagship event hosted by a partnership that is designed to bring together the power of sport, business, government, as well as innovation in service of sustainable development goals. Now speaking to Channel Africa Sport, Partnership Chief Executive Officer Itumeleng Oliphant explains the relationship between business as well as the sport of golf.
I think, there's a lot of these conferences and, formal events and so on. I think bridging business and sports, sport like golf, where already the leaders are already there. So meet people where they are, and I think it's just a more human and high trust environment for people to engage.
Now, and it's at its core, rather, Swing for Goals reimagines the traditional golf day. Oliphant also speaks about sport business.
I think sport is a great connector. I think it's absolutely critical for us to invest more in sports, not just on a national level, but on a very local level. If you look at the development of sport, it also impacts, let's say, how much is spent in terms of healthcare, keeping your people healthy in your country. And I think it's a great connector.
Right, he also further elaborates on just how two people from different backgrounds can use the sport to connect on a business level.
Nelson Mandela's quote is always thrown around, but I think in a really meaningful way, it's an equalizer. It's how a tech founder, let's say from Ekasi, and a CEO of a venture capital firm can be putting on the same green, as it were, and really connecting, people on the continent.
And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. Have a great sporting weekend. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa. Thank you to Musibudi Makura and Chanduko Ligeke. It's gone exactly 4:39 Central African Time. Now, Backbase has unveiled the world's first AI-powered banking platform. The Amsterdam-based fintech company says this AI-powered banking platform will offer the continent's financial institutions the competitive edge as it will scale digital transformation and also help to unlock new revenue streams. The company says it is on a mission to put bankers back in the driver's seat. To find out how they intend to do this, we're joined this afternoon by Heidi Custers. She's a Global Strategy and Transformation Director at Backbase. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to Africa in Business.
Hi, Thami. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a bit, Heidi, about Backbase and the work that you do.
Yeah, so Backbase, as you've said, is headquartered in Amsterdam, but is a global company. We operate in 15 hubs around the world. We actually have a very big focus on the African continent. We work with some of the largest banks on the continent, and we have a big focus in Africa. What we do is create an AI-powered banking platform. We've been around for around 20 years and have recently pivoted very hard into the very first AI-powered banking platform. So this is designed to ensure that both employees and especially customers benefit from the massive acceleration in AI and in what it is bringing to banking and customer experience.
So tell us more about this AI-powered banking system. You've just spoken about how it can benefit employees and customers, but how does it work?
Yeah, of course. So most banks, if not all of them, have an app, and that is usually, and increasingly so, the mobile apps are the primary interaction that a bank has with its customers. But underneath those often very beautiful apps are legacy systems and very fragmented data. And this is why the experience that customers often have is not joined up. So as much as banks have been massively investing in their digital transformation over the last 10 years, it hasn't been able to give them what they need, and their cost to income ratios are still very, very high because of those underlying legacy systems. The AI-powered banking platform aims to orchestrate everything that sits inside a bank, from the payment system to the core banking solution to all of the data that lives in all of those different places, and intelligently serve the customers through, on one side, agentic AI, which is essentially just autonomous processing, allowing AI systems to act autonomously to achieve goals, unlike regular AI, which just follows instruction. And on the other hand, providing holistic advice to customers. So taking all the data that the bank has on you and taking all of that and providing you automated advice in a way that can scale. So servicing on one hand, advice on the other.
What kind of advice are we talking about here? How in-depth, how intricate and complicated is this advice that they would be able to give?
So this is the amazing thing about what Backbase is doing here. We are working with banks to work on the use cases. So we've launched the AI Factory and a center of excellence headquartered in Vietnam, and we're working with banks on their specific AI use cases. So some of these may be around some basic personal financial management, going beyond those budgeting visualizations that you sometimes see in an app, into actually seeing how you behave and then nudging you to better save or invest depending on your behavior. Some of this might also be with regards to lending. So a lot of these use cases have to do with how loans are dispersed, but also as you pay off a loan, how to make sure that the bank keeps you within their ecosystem in a way that grows your financial wealth. So it's really, on the personal banking side, very much related to using the behavior of personal banking customers. And then on the business and corporate banking side, that is a very big focus for Backbase at the moment, one of our target market initiatives. Things like trade finance, really taking very complicated things like letters of credit, etc., very manual processes, applying AI to them and speeding them up so that trade finance can be done in a matter of hours or minutes instead of a matter of days or even weeks with some banks.
Sounds really innovative. Which of the financial systems or institutions, rather, are already using Backbase, and how has that helped them and how has it changed their way of doing business?
So globally, we work with around 150 banks. But if we focus in on the African continent, we've been working with the Standard Bank Group, the First Rand Group, banks like I&M Bank in Kenya, CIH in Morocco, Mauritius Commercial Bank, which operates in 5 countries around Mauritius and Comores. And what we've been doing with them over the last few years is setting them up for their next wave of AI. So working with them on their digital transformation on their application level and their orchestration level, and getting them ready for now the big wave in AI, which we've just launched. So you'll start to see things coming out in the AI space with those banks and our partnerships very soon, because we have been working with them for, some upwards of close to 10 years, setting them up for the big wave now in AI.
What type of investment is needed to actually develop this type of intelligence and technology?
It's not insignificant, I will tell you. I think the main point of view here is we want to make the investment so that the banks don't have to individually invest in building everything from scratch. That's the whole point of working with a company like Backbase. Let us build the plumbing, and then your bank can differentiate on top of us. So the investments are significant. We've been investing. We received funding around 2 years ago of $120 million. And the bulk of that has gone into really pushing our big pivot into AI. We are going all in on it, and we believe it's going to significantly change the economic contribution of banking. If just Africa, some analysts are saying up to $61 billion economic contribution of AI alone.
And who are the typical funders for tech-driven initiatives such as yours?
We work with a really great value a VC called Motive Partners, but there are often private equity firms around the world who are very interested and excited in this. And then big tech, right? Big tech is putting everything behind AI at the moment as well. So we're also working with, we partner with Microsoft on their Copilot initiatives, which, as everybody knows, also has OpenAI as one of its backbones. So it's a range of different things, Thami.
And your relationship and the partnerships that you'd form then with financial institutions, would that typically be a licensing deal?
Yes. So typically it's a licensing deal. We also work to help financial institutions implement the tech. So it's not just about accessing software as a service, but also partnering with them along the journey. This is where, for instance, our AI factory is really going to come into play. This will help bridge the AI skills gap that often happens. People are catching up, but it's still very nascent technology in a lot of the banking institutions. So it's licensing as well as support on bridging that skills gap.
And what about development? Because I would assume that the element of differentiation is also quite important for the banks.
Massively. So on the development side of things, as I said earlier, the Backbase's point of view is we provide the plumbing, right? And then through the work that we do through partnering with them on consultative advisory work, as well as providing developers and upskilling their developers, that's where we intend to basically move us from where we are today to the future. So we do provide development as well, but very much related to the Backbase AI-powered banking platform.
So you did say that we can look forward to this in the future. Can you give us some timelines? When can we start looking out for all of these innovations and this AI-powered technology within the banking systems?
In the last 2 weeks, we've actually signed on our first few projects. The launch was only 3 weeks ago, and in the last 2 weeks, we've signed 2 new projects in the AI implementation space on the new AI-powered banking platform. The great thing about AI is it accelerates a rate of innovation. So I would say within 3 to 6 months, you will start seeing green shoots, specifically with our banking partners around the world.
Oh, certainly looking forward to that. The future is here right now. Heidi Custis, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. She's a Global Strategy and Transformation Director at Backbase, working with over 150 banks, she says, around the world, including obviously the African continent, and putting innovation right at the forefront of banking and development. And one of the things that they've said is that they're once again putting banks in growth mode. It is exactly 49 minutes, yes, 49 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we make way for Victor Humusana and looking up at the business for this week.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Standing by, Victor Humusona, very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us once again. If you don't know by now, let me just remind you, he is author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. Victor Humusona also is the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. Good to have you with us once again.
Good to talk to you again, Thami. Good Friday.
It is indeed a Good Friday. Let's take a look at companies and that are really enjoying the good news and the good fortune of being labeled the fastest growing companies in 2025. How are they faring for this week, for this year rather?
Yeah, this is based on the work by the Financial Times, and it measured the rate of growth in compound annual growth rate. And that is important because compound annual growth rate tells you how from year 1 to 2 to 3 you are doing, which shows a trend. If you are growing on the compound annual growth rate on that basis, it means you are sustaining your growth. So the measurement is from 2022 to 2023. And it listed, in partnership with the statistics company, research company, Statista, and they found that the top 5 countries with the fastest growing companies are South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Morocco, and Mauritius. But the interesting thing is they measure 130 companies, and 51 of them come from South Africa, 28 of them from Nigeria, 12 from Morocco and Kenya each, and Mauritius, I think it's 9. That just tells you that the South African economy is still very central to the economy of Africa or Greater Africa. But the top 3 companies, I think, are from Nigeria. In other words, in the 130, the top 3 fastest growing companies are from Nigeria. And it's not surprising if you have people like Aliko Dangote, who in one was able to double his wealth. And you just look at his group, you look at many other companies in that country. Nigeria is critical, but it's still a fair balance because it's Nigeria in the west, South Africa in the south, Kenya in the east, Morocco in the north, and Mauritius in the islands, in the Indian Ocean island.
What can be the common factors within these top 5 companies? Do they belong to any specific sectors?
No, they don't, but obviously there are trends. The Nigerian companies, the South African companies, the growth sectors, Thami, in Africa are the renewable energy, the metals, the shall I say, real estate, tourism, and I'm trying to think of the other one, technology and innovation and financial services. So it's a mix of those sectors that are driving not only growth, but also growth in the inbound foreign direct investment. So those are the sectors that are driving that growth. It's a broad swathe of sectors. It's not just one sector, which tells you why Africa is so exciting, because it has a range of sectors. Agriculture, that's the other one I was looking for. Agri-tech, and don't undermine online learning as well, because what 2020 did, a lockdown, just accelerated that need to have tele-education or facilities that can allow hybrid education to take place.
And that's certainly a trend that hasn't abated. Let's turn our focus now to Kenya, also listed as one of the top performing countries on the continent. Well, out of the 130, one of the top 5 there. When we're looking at Kenya, we see that Karakuta Fresh Produce, they're investing or already commissioning in avocado.
Right, and the reason I picked an avocado story is because Kenya about 3 years ago overtook South Africa as the top exporter of avocados because of the relationship they had with China. So this is 7,500 ton avocado egg house, and it's outside of Nairobi, and it works though with about 1,500 smallholder farmers who are in 4 counties, Kiambu, Meru, I think, and Nyeri is the other one. But the reason I found this story interesting is that it's financed by Equity Bank, I think, and which is Equity Bank James Mwangi show. But it combines modern machinery and smallholder farms. So when you look at Kenya as a top exporter, you'll think there's one big farm. No, it's actually the collaboration between packing factories like this that bring machinery from Israel. I think the equipment that's going to be in this warehouse, the pack house, is from Israel. But they combine that kind of smallholder contribution and the sophistication of market linkages. So it's the same story with coffee in Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia. It's not one big farm. It's many smallholder farms that are coordinated around the supply chain to make sure they can produce quality and then, if you like, deposit it into pack houses like this one so that they're able to access sophisticated international markets.
And wrapping up this afternoon, some feedback on the Africa CEO Forum. We covered it quite extensively during the course of this week. And one of the key objectives was really making sure that there is increased partnership between government and the private sector. What are some of the key outcomes that came out of that from Abidjan?
Yeah, it's just that. I mean, it's about the African Continental Free Trade Area. These leaders, nearly 3,000 of them, coming from 90 countries. This is a partnership between the publication media group Jean Afrique and the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank. And it just shows you that it's in its 12th year, I think. And it's saying there is a need for a structured dialogue between public sector and business to make sure that the implementation of this is more facilitated, is more efficient. But there are also very interesting deals, like the $100 million deal between Access Bank, which, if you know, just got the license to operate a major bank in Kenya, Nigerian bank operating in Kenya, getting the approvals a month ago. The partner is a $100 million deal for a facility with the German Development or German Investment Corporation, DEG. So these are just some of the highlights. But Thami, I really have to say this. President Adama Barrow of the Gambia, there's a lot of things happening there with the allocation of the assets that were taken or impounded from the former president Yahya Jammeh, and there are concerns from the people of Gambia talking about there's not as much transparency in the sales of his vehicles, livestock, and a lot of other things that they said belong to the Gambian people, but they are suspecting that maybe people closer to the politicians, the powerful politicians, might be helping themselves. So it's a story to watch. Gambia is a small country, but this is a good example of managing to impound and recover stolen assets and redistribute them with the public or civil society holding the powerful accountable.
And we don't often see that happening. So here is one case in point where we actually are starting to see some sort of movement. Victor Khomusano, always a pleasure. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Tony. Have a good week.
Have a great one. This Victor Khomusano, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. He's also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. It is exactly 4:58 Central African Time. Bonjour, Joël. What's in store for our Friday today on Vue d'Afrique?
Bonjour, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Restez connectés sur Vue d'Afrique dans 2 petites minutes. Il s'agira du Tchad, de l'interpellation de l'opposant Succès Masra et aussi Ali Bongo et sa famille en Angola, aux grandes dames des Gabonais. Nous parlerons également des États-Unis qui suspendent toute participation au G20. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connectés.
Merci, Joël. Merci. And that's how we bring it to the end for this week for Africa in Business. I'm Thami Ngubeni. From myself and the entire team, our producer, Mabubu Loka, technical producer, Katu Madava, and on social media, Nzako Mashaba. You have yourself a fabulous evening further and a great weekend. We'll see you on the other side in the brand new week as we look at the latest in business on the African continent.